My parents handed my sister a luxury villa. Me? They gave me an empty parking lot. Hey, at least you can sleep under the stars. They chuckled like it was some kind of joke. But when I actually turned that patch of concrete into a legit business, suddenly they wanted in. I should have known that dinner invite wasn't about family. It was a setup like always. My parents only called me over when they had an angle, usually just to remind me I was the family screw-up. Still, I went. Why? Because deep down, I still clung to that dumb little hope that maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd see me. I'm a mechanic. Nothing flashy, but it's honest work. I fix what's broken, get paid, and keep to myself. Meanwhile, my sister Sierra? She's their golden child. Never worked a day in her life, always got what she wanted. She could torch their entire house, and somehow, I'd be the one getting blamed. That's how it always went. So I walk in, and of course, Sierra's already lounging there, sipping wine like she owns the place. Dad's buried in the newspaper. Mom's clanging around in the kitchen, acting busy so she doesn't have to make eye contact. Sierra smirks. Wow, you actually showed up. Take the night off from rotating tires. I ignore her and sit. Mom had said this dinner was important. Dad finally folds his paper and looks up. It is. We've decided it's time to split up our assets. Sierra practically starts glowing. She already knows this is about her getting something big. Mom flashes her a warm smile. We're giving you the beach house, sweetheart. Sierra gasps like she just won a Grammy. Oh my God, the one in Monterey. Mom nods. Yes, honey. It's yours now. I sit there, waiting. I mean, surely there's something for me too, right? Dad turns to me, totally expressionless. And you, Jace? We're giving you the parking lot. Everything goes still. I blink. The what now? The old lot on 8th Street, Mom says, waving it off like she's doing me a favor. It's property. You'll figure something out. Sierra bursts into laughter. Oh my God, that is hilarious. She leans toward me with a smirk. At least you'll always have a place to sleep. Under the stars. Dad actually laughs. That lot's been empty for years. But hey, maybe you can open a lemonade stand or something. Mom gives a tired sigh. You always said you wanted to build something yourself, Jace. Well, here's your shot. I just stare at them. This wasn't disguised as kindness. It was straight up garbage. A memory flashes. Me at 16, coming home from my first day working at the auto shop, grease on my hands, proud as hell. I was holding my first paycheck, ready to show them I was trying. Sierra had been sprawled on the couch, whining about needing a new car. Dad didn't even look up. So, you're gonna smell like oil for the rest of your life, huh? Mom just shook her head. Well, at least he's handy. Maybe one day he'll fix your car for free, Sierra. She never needed to. They bought her a brand new BMW that same week. And now, years later, nothing had changed. I took a deep breath and pushed back from the table. You're serious? Dad just shrugged. You should be thankful we're giving you anything at all. Sierra snorted. Maybe one day you'll be able to afford a real place. They all started laughing like this was peak comedy. I gripped the edge of my chair until my knuckles turned white. But I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Okay. Mom frowned. That's it. No thank you. I stood up. Oh, I'll make something of it. Then I looked at Sierra. And when I do, don't come knocking. She rolled her eyes. Sure, Jace. Can't wait to see what you do with a slab of concrete. Dad muttered, shaking his head. Always so dramatic. I walked out without another word. Fine. If they thought they could humiliate me, they were in for a surprise. I was going to turn that worthless patch of asphalt into something they never saw coming. And when I did, they'd eat every word. I stood in front of that parking lot, staring at it like it was some cruel punchline. Cracked asphalt, weeds growing wild, an old rusted sign hanging on by a bolt. They didn't just screw me over, they laughed while doing it. Fine. They wanted me to fall flat. I'd make damn sure they choked on their own arrogance. The very next morning, I filed for permits to host food trucks. If this was just concrete to them, I'd turn it into something that made money. Within a week, I had deals locked in with some of the best food truck operators in town. Tacos, burgers, coffee, even overpriced vegan bowls for the hip crowd. I didn't go to a bank for a loan. I went to my boss at the shop, a guy who actually respects hard work, and he fronted me what I needed. I used it to set up lights, seating, music, and banners. I wanted this place to feel alive. 3 weeks later, that useless parking lot was booming. A full-on food court with live music, steady crowds, and lines stretching around the block. That's when things really started getting interesting. About a month after the place blew up on social media, guess who showed up? Mom. She strutted in wearing one of her high-end coats, glancing around like she'd just stepped into a landfill. I was busy checking stock when she strolled over. "So this is what you've done with it?" she asked, wrinkling her nose at the crowd digging into their meals. I didn't even look up. "Well, you handed me junk, so I made it useful." She let out one of those sharp sighs, clearly not impressed. "This isn't a real business, Jace. Just a phase, right?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Yeah, well, this phase is pulling in more cash than Sierra's influencer gig ever did." Her eye twitched, and almost like it was scripted, Sierra came strutting around the corner. She froze mid-step, her usual smirk vanishing the second she took in the scene. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. "You turned it into some flea market?" I grinned wide. "Nope. I turned it into a booming business." She scoffed like it was beneath her. "This is a joke. There's no real money in this." I motioned to the packed lot around us. "Really? Then why are all these people tossing around their pretend money every night?" A few customers nearby actually started clapping. Sierra's face went bright red. "Mom, say something," she whined. Mom cleared her throat, trying to sound concerned. "Jace, we're just worried. This doesn't feel stable." I raised an eyebrow. "Unstable, like the fully furnished beach house you handed her for free?" Sierra jumped in before Mom could answer. "You can't sell this place," she said quickly. "This is family property." I laughed under my breath. "Oh, now it's family property? That's funny. Didn't hear the word family when you all were laughing at me." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't fair," she snapped. "You didn't earn this." I turned to face her, slow and calm. "You're really standing here saying that to me?" She crossed her arms, but her voice faltered just a little. "I'm just saying, selling it would be turning your back on us." I tilted my head. "But dumping it on me is a joke? That wasn't betrayal." Mom looked like she was scrambling for the right words. Then finally, she found one. "Well," she said carefully, "if this is doing so well, maybe it's time we talked about a partnership." I just stared at her. Then I broke out laughing, loud enough for heads to turn. "You're joking, right?" I said. "You ignored me, laughed at me, handed me nothing, and now that I turned it into something, you want in?" Sierra crossed her arms again. "It's family money now." I stepped a little closer and looked her straight in the eye. "You already got your share," I said, voice flat. "Deal with it." Then I turned my back on both of them and walked straight into my business, leaving them frozen like mannequins. They thought they'd broken me. Truth is, I was just getting warmed up. A few days passed before I got the first call. I was in my makeshift office, a repurposed shipping container parked on the edge of the food truck park, when my phone buzzed. "Mom." I stared at the screen for a second, then hit decline. Another call. Then another. I couldn't help but smirk. Now they needed something. Funny how that works. The food truck park had become the hottest place in town. We had weekend events, live bands, a VIP area, and social media influencers begging to get in. I was making more each month than I used to see in an entire year under a car hood. And now the same people who laughed at me couldn't stop calling. A few days later, I was out back overseeing a delivery when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in weeks and didn't miss. "Jace." I turned around. Sierra. She stood there with her arms crossed, but the smugness? Gone. She looked desperate. I raised an eyebrow. "Well, you actually showed up at the parking lot. What happened? Your designer heels get stuck somewhere." She exhaled sharply. "I need to talk to you." I checked my watch. "You've got 5 minutes. Make it worth it." Her jaw tensed, but she pushed through. "I need to sell the beach house." I blinked. "The same beach house you used to rub in my face?" She brushed that off. "The market's trash right now, and I need money. Fast." I smirked. "Let me guess, too many luxury trips, handbags, and overpriced lattes?" She stiffened. "It's complicated," she muttered. "Just say you'll help." I leaned back against a food truck and crossed my arms. "Help? And how exactly do you expect me to do that?" She hesitated. "I need 200 grand to cover debts before I can even list it." I let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's tough." Then I turned back to my delivery crew and waved them over. "Anyway, good luck with that." She grabbed my arm. "You're not serious," she snapped. "You've got the money." I pulled back from her grip. "Oh, now my business is real enough for you to come begging?" Her cheeks flushed red. "Jace, come on, we're family." I let out a laugh. "Funny. Last time we spoke, you called me a joke. What happened to that energy? She opened her mouth like she had something to say, then shut it just as fast. I'll pay you back, she muttered finally, her voice small. Please. I stared at her for a long second, then leaned in, calm as ever. No. Her eyes widened. No. I gave her a slow smile. That's right. Just like you, Mom and Dad all said no when I needed support. Just like you laughed in my face and told me I was nothing. So no, Sierra, I'm not your safety net. She stepped back like she'd been slapped, her shock quickly boiling into anger. You're really gonna let me fail? I shrugged. That sounds like a you problem. And with that, I turned and walked away. But it didn't end there. About a week later, I pulled into the lot and saw them, my parents. Mom looked pissed. Dad looked worn out. Jace, Mom said sharply, we need to talk. I sighed. Let me guess, Sierra ran to you in tears, and now you're here to talk sense into me? Mom pursed her lips. This is serious. Dad finally spoke, voice low. We need your help, son. My eyebrow went up. Son? Huh. Now I'm a son again. Mom sighed like this was all beneath her. Your father's business is in trouble. We're struggling. I had to fight the grin trying to break across my face. Oh wow, I said, acting surprised. You mean the family that gifted Sierra a mansion and handed me cracked asphalt is having financial issues? Shocking. Mom's nostrils flared. Don't be childish, Jace. I tilted my head. Childish like laughing at someone when they're down? That kind of childish? Dad groaned. We don't need a speech. We need a loan. There it was. The big ask. I rubbed my chin like I was thinking. How much? Mom swallowed. $500,000. I burst out laughing. $500,000? You've got to be kidding me. Dad nodded, looking like he hadn't slept in days. You're doing well now. You can afford it. I crossed my arms. So now I'm suddenly successful? Mom snapped. Don't be a brat, Jace. We're your family. I let the silence settle before answering. Let me tell you something about family. I stepped in closer. Family doesn't mock you when you're struggling. Another step. Family doesn't treat you like trash. One more. Family doesn't only show up when they're desperate. Mom's face lost its color. Dad muttered, Jace, please. I took a breath and slowly shook my head. You made your choices. I waved a hand toward the lot, the lights, the crowd, everything I'd built from nothing. And I made mine. Then I stepped back. I'm not giving you a dime. Mom gasped. You ungrateful. I held up a hand. Stop. We're done here. I turned to leave. Jace. Dad called after me. If you walk away. I paused and looked back. If I walk away? I repeated. You mean like you walked away from me? Silence. Just as I thought. I gave a single nod. Exactly. And I left them standing there. But my revenge wasn't just turning them down. It was making sure they had front row seats to watch me win. I honestly thought that was the end of it. I'd said my piece, no money, no favors, no second chances. But people like my parents and Sierra? They don't take rejection quietly. Sure enough, just a few days later, they started fighting dirty. It began subtly. I was checking my phone one morning when I noticed the first review. 1 star. Overrated. Food is expensive, and the owner's a jerk. Avoid this place. Then another. 1 star. Terrible experience. Rude staff. Smelled like a dumpster. And another. 1 star. Don't support this business. The owner's a selfish, bitter man who clearly doesn't care about family. I chuckled. Nice try, Mom. She always had this victim complex. Throw you under the bus, then cry like you were the one being mean. I could picture her now, sitting in that fancy kitchen, rage typing on her laptop between sips of overpriced wine, thinking she was teaching me a lesson. But of course, they didn't stop there. A few days later, a city inspector showed up at my lot, looking more uncomfortable than official. Got an anonymous complaint, he said, glancing around. Something about your permits maybe not being up to code. I just nodded and smiled. Let me guess, middle-aged woman, probably smelled like expensive perfume, and a spoiled daughter with an attitude? The guy scratched the back of his head. I'm not allowed to say who filed it, but something tells me you already have a pretty good idea. Oh, I knew exactly who it was. And it didn't stop at that one report. Next came a complaint about my seating supposedly violating spacing laws. Then one about the music being too loud. Then food safety. Then sanitation. One after another. They were trying to drown me in red tape, choke my business with fines, stall me in courtrooms, and bury me under paperwork. They thought if they couldn't shame me into quitting, they'd harass me until I gave up. But I don't break that easy. Instead of folding, I went on the offensive. I hired a solid lawyer. We combed through every regulation, every form, every tiny city code line by line. By the time we were done, my paperwork was so airtight even the inspector admitted everything was spotless. They wanted to kill my reputation? So I turned up the volume. I doubled my marketing. I ran weekend events, food giveaways, live music nights. I started collaborating with local influencers, VIP tastings, free promo, the whole deal. And business boomed. Then I went bigger. I leased the lot next door and opened an outdoor beer garden. I teamed up with local artists to host weekend craft fairs. I took their little sabotage stunt and flipped it into free publicity. Every time they tried to tear me down, I used it as fuel to rise even higher. And then Sierra? She made the dumbest move of her life. It was a Saturday night, our busiest night. The air was buzzing with music, people laughing, the smell of tacos and burgers mixing in the air. Lines were wrapped around the corner. That's when I heard the yelling. This place is a joke. I turned toward the entrance, and there she was. Sierra. And she was wasted. Her hair looked like she'd been dragging herself through a wind tunnel, makeup smeared, and her expensive dress all wrinkled and wet, like she'd been sobbing in her car before barging in. Mom was right behind her, trying to pull her back. Sierra, stop. This isn't. Sierra yanked her arm away. I can't believe you think you're better than us, she screamed. Look at you, just a damn mechanic pretending to be some kind of businessman. People started turning. Phones came out. And me? I smiled. This was perfect. I walked toward her, voice steady. Sierra, you need to leave. She staggered forward, pointing at me. Oh, you think you're hot stuff now? Better than all of us. I gave her a smirk. I don't think it, see. I know it. Her face twisted with rage. You're nothing. Nothing. And then bam. Splash. She grabbed a beer off someone's table and chucked it right at me. Cold beer hit my chest, soaking my shirt. The crowd went dead silent. A second later, 2 of my security guys tackled her to the ground like clockwork. Gasps. Whispers. Cameras rolling. Mom screamed. Let her go. She's your sister. I brushed off my soaked shirt and looked over at my head of security. Call the cops. Sierra's eyes went wide. What? No. Jace, don't. I crouched down next to her, keeping my voice low. Actions meet consequences. 10 minutes later, flashing lights lit up the lot. Mom lost it. You're ruining the family's name, she shrieked. I just laughed. Lady, you did that all by yourself. Sierra was loaded into the back of a squad car, sobbing and pleading. For a moment, she looked exactly how I had felt years ago, humiliated, powerless. But me? I didn't feel a thing. Mom turned to me, her voice shaking. She's your sister. Do something. I crossed my arms. Oh, like how you did something for me. Like when you laughed in my face and handed me nothing? She had no comeback. Not a single word. I turned to head back toward the crowd, calm as ever. Oh, I called over my shoulder, hoped the beach house was worth it. And just like that, I went back to doing what I do best, running a business they said would never succeed. They wanted to see me fall? Now they got front row seats to my rise. After Sierra's public meltdown and arrest, I figured that'd be the final straw. That they'd finally get it. That they'd back off. But nope. 1 week later, they showed up again. This time, no smug grins. No fake politeness. They looked like people who'd hit bottom. I was in the middle of a meeting with my event planner when I saw them hovering near the front gate, awkward, stiff, completely out of place. Funny how roles flip, huh? For years, I'd been the one feeling small around them. Like I'd never measure up. Now they were the ones squirming. I finished my meeting, didn't rush, and finally walked over, arms crossed. You're back, I said, keeping it casual. Let me guess, I said, crossing my arms. Sierra sent you because she's too embarrassed to show her face? Dad cleared his throat. We need to talk, Jace. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, like the little talk we had when you handed Sierra a beachfront mansion and gave me a cracked parking lot. That kind of talk. Mom pursed her lips, clearly holding back. This isn't about the past. I chuckled. No, it's exactly about the past. Because if you hadn't treated me like garbage, you wouldn't be standing here now, begging. Her eye twitched, but she did her best to keep that fake calm mask on. We're in trouble, she finally admitted. I already knew. Sierra had maxed out her credit cards trying to keep up her influencer fantasy. That beach house? She'd refinanced it 3 times just to fund the illusion. And Dad's business? It was circling the drain. The economy tanked, and the people he counted on the most had already jumped ship. They were both sinking fast. And now? I was the only lifeline they had left. Dad sighed and looked at me with tired eyes. Jace, we're family. Families help each other. That made me laugh out loud. Really? Now we're family? You weren't big on family when you laughed in my face and tossed me aside like I didn't matter. Mom stiffened. You have more than enough to help. Why are you being so cruel? I stepped in, lowered my voice just enough to make it sting. Cruel? No. Cruel would be me buying your house just to toss you out of it. Their eyes went wide. Dad's face drained of color. You wouldn't. I gave him a slow smirk. Wouldn't I? See, I had been ready for this moment for a long time. After the sabotage, the fake reviews, Sierra's tantrum, and arrest, I knew it was only a matter of time before they came crawling. So I planned ahead. While they were flailing in debt, trying to save face, I was buying up property. Expanding. And their house, the house we grew up in, the bank had listed it. And I bought it. Mom's face went pale. No, she whispered. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, scrolled a bit, and held it up so they could see the email. Subject, new property purchase confirmed. Dad's hands started to shake. You bought our house? He asked, voice cracking. I tilted my head. You mean the house where you told me I didn't belong? The place where you let Sierra treat me like I was dirt? Mom reached out and grabbed my arm. Please, Jace, we'll do anything. Just don't take our home. I pulled my arm away. Now you know what it feels like to have something ripped away from you. She started to cry, but this time, I didn't care. And then came the final blow. I looked at them both, took a breath, and said, You know what? I'm not heartless. Mom gasped, clinging to that tiny bit of hope. You'll let us keep it? Dad let out a sigh like someone had just lifted the weight off his chest. I nodded. Sure. Their shoulders dropped in relief. But, I added, pulling a folded piece of paper from my pocket, there's a condition. They both nodded quickly. Anything, Mom said. I held up the contract I'd already prepared. You can live in the house. But I own it. And you'll pay me rent, on time, every month. No excuses. Mom's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. I leaned in, calm and steady. Oh, I'm dead serious. Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. How much? I named the price. It was steep. More than fair for the market, but high enough they'd feel it. Every month. Like a weight they couldn't shake off. Mom's face contorted with anger and disbelief. You're charging us to live in our own home? I smiled. No. I'm charging you to live in my home. Silence. Dad exhaled slowly. We don't have a choice, do we? I shrugged. There's always motels. Mom glared at me like she wanted to spit venom, but she knew they'd lost. Dad took the pen and signed with shaking hands. Mom snatched it next and pressed so hard into the paper I thought she'd rip it in half. I took the signed contract, folded it neatly, and tucked it into my jacket. Pleasure doing business with you, I said, turning my back to them. Behind me, Dad slumped against the wall, rubbing his temples. Mom stood there wiping away tears, her face twisted in pure humiliation. They'd spent years treating me like I was worthless. A disappointment. A joke. Now, I own their house. I own their future. I own them. And as I walked back into the empire I'd built from nothing, I couldn't help but smile. They said I'd never amount to anything. Now I owned everything. And they had nothing.